Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this exclusive RTS London preview of Mobile 101. Based on the true story of the dramatic rise and fall of Nokia, once the world's biggest mobile phone manufacturer, this sharp, incisive and stylish 80s set drama chronicles the hard-fought making of the game-changing Nokia 101 and the company's David versus Goliath legal battle against its American rival Motorola over the patents behind its success. My name is Walter Iuzzolino. I'm the co-founder and chief creative officer of Walter Presents, and I'll be your host as we take a look behind this fantastic series infused with nostalgia and vintage pop culture. Before I introduce you to our panel, let's take a look at what we're here to talk about.
Nokia!
You have filed a patent infringement case against Nokia.
Siis väittääkö tosissaan, että koko satana Citymanin ulkoasu on kopioitu, hä?
So who told you to dismantle and examine a Motorola phone?
Perfectly common practice.
You're facing the American court!
Well, we faced the Soviet Union.
Amerikan Villelle, mitä tapahtuu, kun alkaa yli Nokialaisen linja? Nokialla.
Lovely stuff. So joining me to discuss, and I read this because I don't want to get their names wrong, but joining me to discuss how they made the series are a bunch of lovely people. We have lead actor Sampo Sarkola. He's known for his performances in The Eternal Road, Bordertown and Shadow Lines. And Sampo brings to life Nokia's former CEO, Jorma Ollila, who is credited for bringing the company out of a period of internal conflict and boardroom coups. Also joining him is the series creator, writer and director Maarit Lalli. Throughout her career, Maarit has directed several award-winning short films and worked as a writer and director for several popular TV series. Her first feature film, Almost 18, won the UC Award for Best Screenplay, Best Film and Best Director. And last but not least is executive producer Minna Haapkylä. An actor turned producer, she is head of scripted content at production company Rabbit Films. So thank you all for being here. We have a bit of time towards the end to take some questions from the YouTube chat. So if you want to email either YouTube or email at rtslondon@rts.org.uk. And so if you send any burning queries and questions, I'll try to fold them into my conversation, or we'll save them for the end. But otherwise, I think we can safely dive in. So Maarit, the first question really is for you, because you're the creator and you took the lead on fleshing this out. So why this story? Why did you decide? What about the Nokia story felt to you as a creative that it was worth a television treatment?
Well, 2012, I met an ex-lawyer of Nokia, Annu Palmu, and she told me very special stories about her times in Nokia 80s, 90s. And I was working then with my second feature film, The Sixth Time, and I said that those stories are incredible and something people don't know in public. But we can wait because I don't have now time to do it. But then came the 3rd of September 2013 and the news that Microsoft will buy Nokia's phone business. And immediately I knew that somebody's anyway going to make a film or TV series about Nokia, so why be me? So next day after this news, I called to Finnish Film Foundation and one of the TV channel in Finland, and I asked if somebody's already making something about Nokia story. So I understood that I was the first, so then I started.
Very good. I'll ask you a lot more detail about the granular research that went into it. But first, I want to sort of cast my net wider and ask a question to each and every one of you to just set the tone of the conversation. So my next question really is for Sampo, which is what attracted you to the role? Because you play a fairly complex and sophisticated role of a man that has to take over the reins after the death and suicide of the former CEO. And so you have to steer the company through a period of great change. So tell me about when you heard about the project and what made you want to be part of it.
Yeah, well, I heard rumors about that the Nokia saga or the Nokia story was going to be a television series, and I thought that I absolutely want to be part of that cast. And I never thought that I would being the part of Jorma Ollila. I didn't expect that. But then I met Maarit actually at a party, and I somehow I didn't at that moment realize that I didn't realize that she was still in the process of casting or anything. I just wanted to tell her that I thought it was a wonderful project, and I kind of probably told her that I would be very interested in being in any part, just anything, and I wanna be in that story. A couple of weeks later, if I remember right, she called me and she said that there is a small part that I could maybe be interested in, and that was Jorma Ollila.
And it's not really a small part at all. So tell me about that part a little bit more.
Well, he's a very complex man. There is many sides of him, and the public doesn't really maybe know him that well. He has been very been protecting his private life very well, and now when he's retired, there is an autobiography that I read, and of course to portray a person in such in a position with such power, it is always interesting to try to find the weak points or the fears and the character, the things in the character that makes him vulnerable and interesting for the audience, to try to tell something that the audience doesn't already know.
I will ask you a bit more about that later, but now my next question really is for Minna, and then we can go into the granular detail. And Minna, you have been traditionally at your company, you've been factual producers with sort of lots of really fantastic creations. Was this have I read correctly that this was your first scripted drama series for your business?
Yes, it was. Actually, I have a dog here now who started to play with a toy. Sorry. He's a puppy.
Don't worry.
Yes, it was the first one, and it was a huge one. So it was like
what made you think this is the one and to take the leap and to go into scripted?
well, it was. I wasn't in the company when they did only non-scripted. They hired me to do scripted, so that was something that I was looking for, to do some great scripted series. So, and I knew Maarit, and when Maarit came to me with this subject, I mean, the story was incredible, and I thought that why hasn't somebody like told it already? Everybody wants to know about it. So that was an easy step to make, that hey, we are going to make a TV series about it, because Maarit was trying to do it as a feature film, but I said no, it has to be a TV series. So
so the initial development was for a feature film. I understand. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that was the original idea, but it was too like the subject was huge. So I said that no, we have to make. And soon when we have talked, and I was like reading everything that Maarit has written over 7 years, so it was kind of a big pile of paper that I read, but it was so great story, so that I knew that 3 seasons, and it had to be.
Great. So you've given away a punchline, but it's interesting and exciting. You're seeing it as a 3-season. No, but it's good. You're seeing it as potentially very rich material for a 3-season piece. So it's a significant trilogy. So my next question really is for you and for Maarit, and you can bounce off each other depending on how you choose to answer it. But clearly there's been years and years of in-depth granular research and lots of work for what is clearly a big national story. It's etched in the national consciousness, isn't it? Because it's the kind of in some ways it's a very dramatic rise and fall that has captured a whole sector of Finnish culture and society and global culture. Because in some ways, having seen the show and loving the first season, I can see why it would resonate with a Finnish audience, and I will talk about that with you later. But also, there's a big international appeal, because most of us over 30 have owned one of those phones and remember the ringtones very fondly. So there's also a sort of nostalgic pop culture element to it. But the first question I wanted to ask you was, what made you decide the focus of the first season? Because the first season is really the sort of shaky beginnings into the rise towards big success. So talk me through that, and then also, if you can, towards your ideas for what the second and third installment might be like.
Maybe I will start. So first season is I wanted to tell about Nokia something that public so many doesn't know, because when it was not small but small in mobile phones. So and what interested me was the miracle, what happened. So I started to study how they could make that miracle and what was before that. And now it's 88 to 90 because they didn't, even themselves, they didn't know that mobile phones will be the product in which is going to be a Nokia's diamond.
Interrupt your flow, but can I ask you, for the purpose of the listeners, can you explain, because some people will not have seen it yet, obviously, but can you explain that the notion that Nokia, as you rightly said, was a completely different company, was a conglomerate of things going from rubber to forests to paper, and then so can you talk us through that past and how it progressively got into what we all know it for?
So yes, they have paper, forest, and everything that Finnish usually do, and they had also televisions and all, and it was growing and growing, and but they were some things were disaster, and they wanted to be alive, and they were looking what is the right production, and that's where it starts, and in the end of this season they realized that it would be the phone.
And so, in a way, your kickoff point, again, for the benefit of listeners, is a very tragic event, which is the death of the much loved, quite eccentric, quite effervescent CEO. And what happens after that, as the company tries to refocus and understand what's going to be the product of the future, so to speak, or what they should be concentrating on. So that is the sort of the sizable first chapter. Can you talk me through what you think the next two chapters might be then, and where will you take the story?
Well, the season 2 is now they have season 1 is still NMT, and the season 2 they have the first GSM phone call in the whole beginning of that, and so the Nokia is the winner in that competition. So then we start to see what happens then, and when they are the next thing they are going to buy British Technophone, and that's why they can go to American market, because the Technophone is already there. And Minna, if you want to say something more now.
It's more the second season will be when Nokia came international. We will see like how it grows bigger and how the language in the Salo factory actually changes to English, because they have so many engineers and workers that come abroad. So the whole language is changing to English, and then it's because the Finnish people can't speak at that time, engineers were not so good in English. So they have kind of Finglish language in Nokia when they mixed like Finnish words with English words so that they could understand each other. And then when Asia comes, then Nokia went big in Asia. They're giving the golden Nokia phone to the king of Thailand and things like that. They're really like funny moments that what happens then.
And tell me, what about the third season then, the last leg of the journey?
But that's something that we haven't decided yet where it will end, because that's something that we have to like, which is the key like the critical point that we will end the third season. So how far are we going to show it? So this is something it's just in our heads, and Maarit's heads, to be honest. It's in Maarit's head. So but it will go into in the season 2. We are going to show our analysis about what went wrong. So what did they do wrong in the second season? We'll show it. So this is how we started to, and then the third season is that, see, that's what happened. We told you it's going to be not okay. And the third
So
season we will.
Where is your cutoff point from the moment the story becomes sort of public knowledge internationally?
Yeah. So that's something that we're looking for. Is it what was the critical event? Because we know them, and there are several. What our analysis, why did they lost everything, and there was iPhone that came to the market and everything. So why did Nokia lose that game? So we have but we won't tell you. We won't tell it now. You will see it. But we have our own analysis that what's the critical point, that what did they miss. So we will kind of end it there. And then everybody knew that, okay, then it was iPhone and we lost Nokia. And that will happen.
Okay. And one more question still for you and for Maarit, and then I'll go back to Sampo, which is, obviously this is a big, as I was saying earlier, a big national story. So there's a lot of sensitivity because the collective national consciousness, to a large extent, identifies with what has been an enormous global success story. What's the relationship? I know that many years of granular research have gone into creating the stories and telling those stories. And of course, these are years of Maarit's life. But what's the relationship between truth and fiction in the show? How much of it is constructed for dramatic purposes, and how much of it strictly adheres to the actual characters and the events?
Well, I because I love facts, and if something has happened, I want them exactly what they are. So I try to keep the facts, and then the personal life of the characters is something which is from my screenwriter's head. So and there were so incredible happenings, what really has happened. So we didn't have to create them. That was fantastic.
So would you say that, obviously apart from Sampo's character, but quite a few of the other key characters, as in, Aki, Katarina, the lawyers, etc., they are rooted in real people that did those jobs?
Yes. But their personal life in this series are invented. We didn't follow their real lives. We just some characters are combination of several people, and some are directly one person that actually exists. But if they are Jorma Ollila, of course, is Jorma Ollila as a name because he's a public figure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So public figure, but there are the engineers and everybody who don't have a public character. So we couldn't, and we didn't want to use their real lives and real names. So they are invented.
That's very good, and that's a question for Sampo, really. So as your character is a real CEO and a very public, well-known figure, what is the challenge of researching the role? Did you just read his autobiography? Did you reach out to him? Did you speak to journalists? And what are the sensitivities of portraying the weaknesses and the vulnerabilities of somebody who is a pretty powerful and pretty public figure?
First of all, I did quite some research for it, but in my own way. Of course, there's an autobiography that came out, I can't remember, but quite recently, let's say within maybe five years or something. And then a lot of people has worked for Nokia in Finland, and I spent some time in sauna with former Nokia employees that has met Jorma in real life during that time. And then, of course, there is a lot of written history and a lot of opinions about him. And when I approached it, I realized that there is so much, opinions about Jorma Ollila, because it's it's such a big part of Finnish economy, and so yeah, I realized I can't take it all in. I have to just try to follow the script, of course, and then try to make him as human as possible with his personal life and the choices he has to make. And actually, I was at one point thinking that there might even be a possibility that he never even wanted to be the boss of Nokia. Maybe he just things happened in his life that resulted in that. And when he started to
is that the part that you sort of imagine in trying to give him a three-dimensional sensibility? You were thinking, what if this man had doubts and he wasn't just oh, I see, that's interesting.
Exactly. And when he started with mobile phones for Nokia, nobody knew that the mobile phone revolution is going to happen. And it was more like a small segment product that was very interesting from an engineering point of view. But nobody knew that it's going to be as big as it became. And Jorma definitely, I think that, the next 10, 20 years from that point when the phone was first developed, I don't think he ever imagined.
So do you think so what is the feedback you've received either from people who knew him or from the press? Because if you portray a very public figure, there would be a range of opinions about how loyal to or faithful to reality your portrayal has been, or what's been the feedback? I don't suppose he's written to you, right?
It's been good, I guess, but I suppose people don't tell you when it's bad.
No, but it's more like I was thinking in terms of capturing the profile of a man that's so known in society.
I understand. I don't really want to get into that too much because I know I tried to portray him the way I felt, the way I saw him. But there was a moment when I met him on set. He came and visited us, and I actually it felt really how could I say it was a special moment because I realized that the choices I had made from just seeing video footages and then to meet him, I really had to try to not to make a copy of him in front of him, that I tried to lose the role and still try to look very closely at everything that was happening with him during that moment. But to answer your question in if I portrayed him right, I do hope so, and I believe that people have seen that the research is there is a lot of research behind the role.
I can imagine, and well done. It's a stunning performance, and you're right. It's a strong but also quite delicate individual in a very difficult time in the history of a company. So that's quite a sort of interesting and exciting lens through which to observe the drama. But you're talking research, so that's sort of back to Maarit and Minna really, because the volume of research that one feels through watching the show is extraordinary. So because the detail and that's the devil lies in the detail. You do feel authenticity, and you do feel that it hasn't been overly dramatized for the purpose of television. So what would you say, Maarit, have been the most inspiring people during your many years of research? Obviously, you were talking about the initial lawyer that you met that sort of sparked the thought rather, that this could be a very good story to tell. But what are the show in itself? Do you want to talk us through the strands of storytelling? So you got the sort of the power broker CEO, then you got the engineers and sort of technicians, so to speak, and then you got the lawyers defending the company from a lawsuit from Motorola. So it's quite a complex, multifaceted mosaic of the company at a moment of change, seen through the perspective of almost three strands of people. Do you want to talk us through how that came about and what made you interested in those three specific branches of story?
Well, I think the first stories I heard about was that war story with Motorola, and then of course how they made the phone, which is going to be the most sold phone in the world. So and also of course Jorma Ollila, because he is the face to Nokia. So but you asked something like who was fascinated or something like that. So I loved all people I was interviewed. They all have the same. Some I interviewed few times, 10 times, somebody once or like that. But everybody who has worked there like 80s, 90s, at the end of the interview, they somehow like turn inside and they said that, oh my God, that was the time, and I wouldn't give anything away, and I so loved that, and I know that this is going not happen anymore ever. So they were, after 30 years, they were so proud what they have done. So I love those moments. But I must say that the engineer who was our Risto Salminen, so when the real person was different name, but I must say that I couldn't understand anything he told me, and after 10th interview, I think I understood something. And every time I don't know if I answered your questions anymore, but one question I give to all is, can you tell me how the mobile phone is working? And they tell me about different ways, different words, and those, and still I don't know how the mobile phone works.
It's good. I have to say, it's the way you portray it in the series is quite detailed and quite granular. But I myself was thinking, but I'm not particularly scientific mind. But you can just see the fascination with the complexity of it, and also what you were saying, which is these people were caught at a very important time in their life, which was never going to come back. It was a sort of moment of great technological change, and I can imagine that they would look upon this with great fondness and also with great nostalgia, because it was an incredible time also in terms of their own professional profile, but also the overall national pride built in the history of the ascent of a company like Nokia, really. But then the question then broadens in terms of the research. Then I want to also ask Minna, what do you think about there's a very special tone in because this is such a national history with international repercussions, because the one key story you tell in the first season is a lawsuit, and it's a David versus Goliath. So it's the Americans sort of attack Nokia, and it's a lawsuit for patent infringement. And so there's a beautiful and really also quite funny, it's dramatic, but it's also funny portrayal of the American team of lawyers and executives with their corporate culture descending into Finland and just basically attacking and trying to prove that there's been intellectual theft, and how the Finns respond and how they react. So tell me about that sort of culture clash and what you feel about its portrayal.
Well, when we went to Salo, to shoot the whole thing, the real place where it really happened, everybody has a memory of those days or what's happened then. And they're like, when you talk with people, and those days, even though they have happened 30 years ago, and suddenly there were a lot of Americans in Salo. So that's something that it's still, there's like the events that everybody in Salo remembers what has happened, or they have told their grandchildren what has happened then. So but also what was good thing that it actually happened 30 years ago. So people have really different memories about what happens in Nokia in general that time. So we knew that we don't have to be honest to some story or something, because everybody had their own version about it. So that was also fun to do, and people were really eager to tell their point of view and their side of the story. But the sides were not, it wasn't the same situation if you ask the person A and then B. It didn't happen the same. So we got all the information that we wanted, and everybody were really happy to tell about it. But we could do whatever we wanted to do, and that was fun to do, to have Americans in Salo.
I can imagine. But I want to ask you, then let's dig a little bit deeper into America versus Finland, not as a cultural clash, but as an analysis of the perspective, right? Because in terms of TV, the trends, there's been a lot of television now about the rise and fall of big tech companies, BlackBerry, Tetris, in Halt and Catch Fire, which I'm sure you're aware of, We Crashed, etc. So clearly there is an appetite from the audience in seeing brands that we know and love or hate, and to understand the inner workings of those brands, and to understand the human beings that make decisions about those inner workings. And yet, tonally, your show is very, very different in that normally the Halt and Catch Fire end of American storytelling tends to both glamorize and thrillify, for want of a better word, a story, and to create really a sort of an action thriller element with some elements of greed and sex and politics, etc. And it's all done in a very colorful, quite glamorous, high-octane way, which I find really entertaining. I have nothing against it at all. But your tone is very, very different. Your choice for the tone of Mobile One-on-One is much more pared back. It's sometimes almost observational. And he also has a streak of real humor and warmth. So the trailer we showed is really sexy and fun, but it's only partly side of the story, because that makes it quite action thriller. And it's not. It's more like the observing the nuances of the lives of the people that in their everyday choices make momentous decisions for the destiny of the company and all their employees. So tell me about the specific tone you chose for Mobile One-on-One, and also what do you think it says about the difference between American corporate culture and American perception of corporate culture, and the more Finnish, or the story that your show tells, which is more of a family, a nation that's united by investing in people and real relationships rather than corporate structure. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, there were so many questions. I tried to answer
you can
everything.
unpack.
Where shall I start? Well, the tone of the series is something that when I knew that Maarit came to me with this idea, and I know what Maarit loves, what kind of artist she is, I know that the tone of the series is going to be like truthful, close to people, and close to the human, and then humoristic. Not glamorous, not like attractive, some gunshots, or really like something really, really actional. It's going to be in the persons, and Maarit wants that the people fall in love with the characters as they are, that there's some kind of truth in the playing, that the moments are real, and you don't make them bigger than there is, because they were so huge. What did they invent? The engineers and everything there. What happens is big, so we don't have to put them even bigger, and that's something that I love. And I also, as a producer, I also thought that, okay, if our budget is around 4 million and Halt and Catch Fire is like 76, I don't know at all what the budget is, but anyway, 100 million. So we can't compare with those kind of big, huge multi-budgets. So we have to do something that it's more close to us, close to the person, and close to the truth that it actually was in Salo in the 80s. Finland was gray. We were like economical depression. It was like something that really it wasn't a joyful place. And even though we wanted to bring some humor in it. So all the hairs and stuff and the furniture, they are not great. They are not glamorous. They are really what they wear. And Maarit loves the facts, and everything was as they were then. So it was some kind of easy choice to choose the tone because it was already there, and I just have to protect it as a producer, that the tone of Maarit wanted to be, so I made it possible to be.
And you are right, because actually the events in themselves are so momentous that it will be easy to overdraw them somehow and make them almost cartoonishly dramatic, whereas the choice here is the exact opposite choice, and you submerge it. And actually I would say to whoever's viewing and listening to us now, is it's an important thing to bear in mind when watching it, because it's a very rewarding watch, but it takes its time. So it doesn't kind of start with a bang. You need to give your time, wait for the episodes to play out, and then you discover that you're really attached to the characters and you're really fond of them. And even though in one episode it may seem like for a few minutes not very much happens, and there's a conversation in an office about a young girl building a slightly Jenga tower and an engineer helping her. Yeah. So what I'm saying is that it's quite impressionistic, officey type in some ways.
Yeah.
And so you go, okay, is anything going to happen? And then things happen, but they happen in a very close to the real world way. So I found myself personally becoming really excited with the show around the third episode, because by then I knew the characters, I was very fond of them. And when Americans start to come in and the contingent of American cars arrives, then you know you're in for a very big cultural clash. And then the culture of the people that are fighting the American lawsuit, you really care for them, you're really protective of them, and you want them to do well. So that was brilliant, and I think you played it really beautifully. But what was the response of the audience? Because you say in a very humble way, the 4 million, etc. But it's still a huge budget, and by European and Finnish standards, it was an incredibly important budget for you to manage. So what was the response in terms of the Finnish public? Because I know you filmed the show. It must have been a bit of a nightmare because you filmed it during COVID or across the pandemic.
Yes, we did. It was,
Tell me
that
about
was horrible.
What was the challenge of that?
People who are in the business know about the challenge, that how much does it cost to have like private rooms and private cars to everybody, because you can't be close to each other. But I think the worst thing was the creative side, that you have to, the worst pressure was on Maarit and the screenwriters and the HODs, who have to like make the world together, even though they couldn't see each other by, of course, like online, but to be in the same room and create the world together. So that was something that was really the hardest thing to do, to always like to keep people away from each other, and then like be creative alone in there, like here in my room. So that was really hard, and that was really difficult. But of course, that was something that we didn't want to show in the show. That was some, oh, it was so hard. Look what it was. That's why it's so bad, because we had so hard time creating it. So we had to like overcome all those obstacles, and also it's hard to be all the time with the mask as a producer on set, because you can't be like smiling to everybody and be like it's going great, because nobody sees your face. You have to some kind in your words and in your emails be positive and creative, find the words to say really how much I appreciate that we are doing a great show, and but nobody sees your face and nobody knows each other because we are all behind masks, and that was really, really hard to do. But the response of the series has been really great. People want to see the story of Nokia. I mean, people asking, why didn't we know this? How is it possible that we didn't know this? And people didn't know what happened in Nokia. That's strange.
And I want to ask you something about the international issue, but first I wanted to ask Sampo, because you were talking about filming through the pandemic, and I myself have been through it, producing some shows in the height of it, and it was pretty horrible. I mean, exciting because you feel you're in the trenches and you're doing something, you're at least creating, but it is a very tough condition to create. So Sampo, for you as an actor, what were the challenges of creating and delivering a performance during those days?
Well, to be creative in a controlled environment as an actor, I feel I sometimes also want to challenge, the set, and there, of course, there's moments when you have to wear the mask and you have to keep the distance, and it becomes these rules that I feel I want to break them. So and of course then Minna comes and tells you that you have to do those corona tests before you. Well, we got those small packages, and we have to do those tests before coming on sets and stuff like that. But I have to say that it wasn't a problem because Finns are extremely. We follow. We love. I think we love rules, and we follow rules very precisely. If somebody tells you that you have to do it a certain way, we do it.
Very good, very good. Well, you would never know because everything is flawless in terms of watching the show, so you'd never know it was made in such a complex conditions. One for Maarit about the international. Obviously, you knew you were going to tell a very important national story, and you were very attached to it and to the characters and to the humanity of these people. Were you surprised at the success of the show internationally? Because obviously we haven't launched it in the UK yet, and we'll talk later about when viewers can find it, but it's been bought by Disney Plus. I know that there were great reviews in Italy and all over Europe. So what's your sense of, were you surprised that such a Finnish story resonated globally?
Well, you asked earlier because there are so many stories about the same things in international stories, but I go back for first. I was so lucky that I got Minna to produce this and wrap it behind because they trust me, and I can do my films and TV series only in my way. And if somebody is going to say that you must do that or that or that, it's impossible. I can do anything. So I could put my fingerprint in this TV series, and it's the only way me to do. And when 2000, I made my first short film. It's called A Stone Left Unturned, and it is real Finnish story about a son and a father, and it's called went all over the world, and it succeeded, and it was real like my style, and I didn't believe that this is going to be a success in international success, but I know that if I do things my way and with my heart, it may be successful internationally. So
You think it's the emotional authenticity for sure. But in terms of because I was reading about you, and you've been described as a very meticulous individual with enormous attention for detail. You like your research, etc., etc. But what about the style? Because one aspect for us international viewers, and when I launched Walter Presents, one of our big critical and commercial hits of the early days of launching Walter Presents in the UK was Deutschland 83, the German show, which was also a very stylized pop culture nostalgic take on the 80s in Germany and in Europe, and a period of great transition, etc., etc. And I'll be honest with you, the initial attraction for me and the entry point into your work on this series was the idea of the Nokia phone, because I had one and I loved it. The idea of the tone and the style, and as Minna was saying earlier, the idea that people are portrayed exactly as they were. So the interiors and the outfits and the hairdos, you're not trying to glamorize, you're actually recapturing with real attention to detail the tone and style of the time. And that's, I think, would be a point of real appeal for our viewers in the UK and around the world. Were you also personally very heavily involved in the art direction and styling of it? And if so, how did you curate that?
Well, first I must say that I don't like how the 80s looked like, because I'm waiting that we can go to 90s because there are colors and all of that. But of course I wanted that to be what it was. And I don't know is it good or bad, but because of COVID and because I had to write this story while we were starting the production. So usually I'm there so much more with set director or dress director or those, but now I didn't have time to be with them. So I think they could do what they want and the better work than when I go there and say something. So
But you were pleased with the results.
That's true.
yeah.
I want to ask you a slightly more complex question, and this is for you, Minna, in the sense that we've talked about the sort of exciting, journalistically challenging, but enticing aspects of researching such a national story. Tell me about the challenges. There must be elements of telling a corporate story of that scale. Where are there stories that you couldn't tell or you wouldn't tell? Are there controversial bits that actually are not? You can't capture in a television show, and do you ever imagine you might reference because you're doing rise and fall up to the point where it starts to fall, and you will decide where and how that ends. But still, at the moment, the story, from my perception of it as a viewer, is very much a triumph of the spirit. It's David and Goliath, as we said earlier. It's ingenuity and charm and desire to do the right thing. And so it's as you said, it's staying very close to the people and to their own travails as something is steered towards success. But with the arrival of great success from the American market to the international market and the golden phones, etc., comes tension, political tension, potential corruption, wrong decisions that affect a lot of people, and then eventually a sale. So do you envisage that there's any part of this trajectory that you will not touch on because it's too complex or controversial?
Well, probably we will going to have some big discussions about what can we, how much can we like choose sides on this was this is why.
Sides, Minna? Can you talk me through in your mind what are the sides in the simplest way for our audience? The sides of the argument. What would they be? Option A and option B. So.
Well, of course, they are I mean, in the first, I would say that in the first season, this one, when it happens 30 years ago, people were really open to tell everything. They are the moments of the success that the miracle is being discovered. Nokia made a new phone. The mobile phones are going to be a huge thing in the world. So everybody was really like happy to talk about that time. But now we are going to enter a little bit in the second season, then in the third, we are going to enter in the bad things that happens in Nokia. So that means that who makes the wrong decisions? Is it like Jorma Ollila who's choosing bad? Or is it like some other person there, because there are several directors and everybody, I mean, there are lots of people who comes to Finland to work. So are we going to point a finger to somebody? You did something wrong. Is that what we think or not? Or are we going to show several like wrong decisions that people are going to make? Because there are so many different stories about, for example, there are also stories about who invented the tone of Nokia, who invented the logo of Nokia. There are several that I did it. No, it was me. I actually did it. So we have to like pick one. So maybe he actually invented it and we are telling this story. So at the same time that will happen in the bad decisions, who is actually the one who made the bad decision that Nokia was going to fall. So we are going to have several.
That's exciting. I'd love to follow the story of who's made that tone. Very clever. But so are you implying that the first season, in a way, was the one that the story that you could tell with a greater degree of collaboration from Nokia employees, etc., and that the story becomes harder to tell as we come closer to the present time?
Yeah, it comes harder to tell. Of course, we have now fictional characters that they are not one person so we are, of course, we can tell the story also through fictional characters. That there's some, we don't say the name of the people that we actually think that make all the wrong decisions. We are not going to blame, I mean, somebody, one person that ruined Nokia. We are going to show the whole world that the behind the scenes, what happened and why it went wrong. So that's also our, like, something that now we have the fictional characters that people know them already. So it's easier to tell the story through them, what did happen in Nokia. But it's going to be, I think that it's going to be harder.
It's interesting because for me as a viewer, and this is where I got really excited, because watching the first season made me very curious about, and I know you can't talk very much about second and third, and neither would I ask you, but am I right that because the first season is this arc of growth, I can only speculate and imagine that the second in particular would be the peak of success, and that with that you get good stories of, you know, how the success is managed, and potentially stories about greed and money and how
exactly
that changes people. So,
yeah.
So that ingenuity somehow slightly goes away and is replaced by something else. But and I'll ask Maarit about that in a second. But first, I want to ask you, Minna, are the two big sort of camps of the story? One whereby Nokia is a national triumph that gets attacked in a sense because of its success by the bigger outside American sort of monopoly, and is the opposite end of that story is that Nokia was mismanaged by greed and therefore lay itself open to be attacked. Are those the two? I'm asking because I genuinely don't know. What are the two versions of the downfall?
Well, I think that the downfall is something that started in Nokia. Okay, that's something that we think, that Nokia was something that it was from inside that it came. The little cracks that were like, of course, that first the miracle is happened. We made something really great, and somebody's attacking us. That makes us even stronger. But then when we come stronger and bigger, and finally the biggest in the world, that leaves a lot of space to, like, little cracks, little bit entering in the big, into the corporation. And when money, as you say, when money comes, so that's something that we want to tell about, that thing, that it comes from inside the whole thing.
That's very interesting. So that next one is for Maarit, really, because Maarit, the key point of your narration, we were discussing earlier how delicate and impressionistic it is, and how you build really lovely observational scenes out of what is apparently a very mundane office conversation that then becomes about something else, and it becomes about love or having a child or all of that. How is that? And you stay very close to character. That's the brand of this narration, which is what makes it so different and so interesting. How is that closeness going to be possible when success and money and potentially corruption and big mistakes come? So does success corrupt people? You obviously seem to be, to me, the storyteller that tells a story because you love your characters. Are you still able to love these characters as success happens and breaks into their lives?
Yes, of course, because I think every people has black and white inside them, and I love them. And something I can tell from the season 2 is we have that Salo town where was the fabric, and when money came in and people came millionaire, so there were, if I remember right, suddenly there were at the end 48 millionaires in Salo town, and it's a small town, so it did do something in that town, and the money, it was, I think, the richest town in Finland at those times. So if there, I'm not sure, but if there were people like maybe 60,000, and there are so many millionaires, and it's delicious what happened there between the people, and who was working in Nokia and who wasn't. So it's very, very interesting story. being there.
I'm very much looking forward to season 2, and I hope you can, if the development is now completed, I hope you can go into production very soon. Guys, I think that's pretty much it for today. Of course, my last question to all of you would be what your next plans are, but I hope that you're saying to me that they are mostly focused on bringing a second season of this. But is there anything else that you would like to mention about your future projects that we should be alerted?
If I start, so I'm just looking forward. Like I can do this Nokia thing, but meanwhile I have written a future film about are you allowed to love an alcoholic? So in Finland, they say that there are 400,000 alcoholics in Finland, and we have only 5.5 million people. So everyone knows in your family or near your family somebody who is alcoholic. So I want to tell a love story about how to love an alcoholic.
Oh, wow. That sounds quite interesting and quite challenging. Good luck for that. And what about you, Sampo? Tell us about future projects.
For this summer, I will be doing a Nordic noir television series that is set in the 1900s. And I can't really tell much more about it, but it's a Scandinavian production.
Fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to it. We're all big fans of Scandi across the UK and the US. And what about you, Minna?
Well, we are doing now before Nokia 2, we are making a crime series, also a big international one, with called Queen of Fucking Everything.
What a title!
And it's the logline is that there's a successful real estate agent falls betrayed from upper class to the lowest class, but she fights herself back to another upper class, the criminal elite. Oh, wow. And that happens in Helsinki, in Finland. So that's what we're doing now. Yeah.
Sounds very exciting. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us. And of course, also thanks to everybody who's joined this afternoon. Just to recap, so our audience knows, Mobile 101 premieres on May the 21st on Channel 4. All episodes will be available on the Water Presents Hub on all 4, which is now called Channel 4. So you just go on channel4.com and you find them after the premiere on Channel 4 Linear. And you can also check out all the upcoming events from the RTS, which are at www.rts.org.uk. And there are a couple that I want to point out. There you go. So it's Production in Your Pocket, Wednesday, 17th of May. And then the next one, exactly, the television podcast from RTS London. So those are the 2 in particular, but keep an eye out for anything else on the website. And meanwhile, now we have an extended sneak peek clip of Mobile 101, which I hope you'll enjoy, and make sure you watch. Thank you very much, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yes. Maybe you could keep your number, because I was actually quite important in the developing of the Cityman. Yeah, I was the one who realized that there's some problems.
Ihan kun ne yrittäis napsia sellaisia mikrovoittoja, tiedätkö?
Well, yeah, I've been to,
Ne vaan kerää tiedonmurusen sieltä ja toisen täältä ja sitten ne kutoo siitä sellaisen kauhean verkon, ja ne kyydystää meitä.
Problems, I know, yeah, it's French area. Very nice talking to you, buddy.
And it was a Friday night, I was here all
Hi.
Hi.
Andrew, you're not allowed to discuss outside the interviews.
Sure, of course. I completely understand.
Motorola, hey, Jackie, Adahi, Andrew, Chris, please.
You have to stick to the protocol. All discussions outside the interviews are forbidden. Okay?
Ja tämä koskee myös teitä. Mistä me on puhuttu? Ei kontaktia. Kehenkään.
If you want to continue the interviews, you can go to the auditorium and ask for the next names. Or if you want to have a break, you can go to your hotel. The info sheet you have lists all the areas your batch pass covers, and it certainly does not include this. This is the line you can't cross. This side is for Nokia people only. So, this is the protocol we can continue with.
We're very sorry. You've been such great hosts. Guys, please, can we?
Yeah, let's go. Yeah.
Please.
Nice to meet you.
Katarina,
Adahi?
this is the list of names to go over. We'll start with the first one in 15 minutes.
All right.
And it's just Ed.
No mitä? Olisitko itse hoitanut paremmin? Ihan totta. Siinä seisoo tuppisuuna. Ja te kaksi nyt jumalauta, menkää pois siitä.
Who told you to open the Motorola phone and study it in detail?
Hang on, who decided to copy the Motorola design solutions?
Did your bosses tell you to copy the Motorola solutions?
Ei tää ala toimi niin kuin te kuvittelette.
No.
Did you copy the Motorola solutions?
Ootteko te nähnyt lankapuhelinta?
Yes, you did.
Ne on melko samannäköisiä myös.
You did, didn't you?
I don't get it. I mean, you are trying to confuse us, right?
Voiko tarkentaa, onko kyse mikrolevyn vai koko apparaatin komponenteista?
Tell me the truth, huh?
Someone might have told you to take apart the phone?
According to document 5.
Document 7.
Page 18.
Page 13.
Page 32. You have been a bad boy.